allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair, can I make a couple of quick announcements?
Absolutely.
As we get started, appreciate everyone being here this evening. I think I had 106 register on the outside thermometer. That being said, we have the air conditioner going in the back and it's difficult to hear. So I'd advise or recommend bringing that mic up close so the people in the back can hear us. These mics don't work particularly well if they're not right on top of you. Second of all, Ms. Cletus injured her back, and so she'll be standing most of the day or most of this evening. So that's the reason why we're standing. So glad you're here. Thank you for persevering through.
All right, and as far as the trustees, we do have Trustee Satry, who's participating online, and Trustee McKee was not able to make it tonight. Otherwise, we're a full house, and the exciting part is we already have Willa, I'm forgetting your last name. Bishop, who we swore in last spring as our student rep from Helena High, and tonight we get to swear in Luna Hernandez, who will, once she's sworn in, will soon to be our Capitol High School representative. So I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Ridgway.
Now.
So it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce Luna, who will be a senior at Capitol High in the fall. She's a member of Advanced Orchestra as well as the cross-country team, which just started running. Good for her. She volunteers at God's Love through her work with the Capitol High School Helping Hands Club. She's a member of the National Honor Society, and she's also enrolled in AP and honors classes and has a 4.0. She enjoys conversations with people from a variety of different backgrounds and perspectives. She hopes to continue building the skill as a student board rep. Her grandparents came to the U.S. from Cuba. She just told me she's bilingual. I wish I was.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were school-aged children. And she's grown up understanding the importance of freedom of speech as well as a system of government. She has relationships with many different groups at Capitol High, and I believe she'll be a great student board rep. So without further ado, Janelle would like to make her official.
So you'll just repeat after me, and I'll let you have a cheat sheet. I do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Montana,
and the Constitution of the State of Montana,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity, so help me God.
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome. And thank you in advance for your service, Luna. We really appreciate and value the opinions and input from our student reps. So you're really important to the whole process. And thank you for being here, both of you, and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right, first up, we have a presentation from our General Manager of Sodexo School Food Services, Mr. Robert Worthy.
Robert.
Hello, thank you for having me today. It's been a few years since I've been able to present to the board. COVID sure threw a lot of monkey wrenches in there.
A couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's been 4 years since I officially presented to the board.
Really?
Yeah. So hopefully, if I'm starting to talk too fast, raise your hand, say, Robert, calm down. But I just love food service so much, working with the kids. That's why I love to do my job. So we'll kind of go through a little bit here and kind of got some good pictures in here, show you some things we've been doing, talk about some of the stuff that's been going on and things that are going on going forward. All right, so I'm kind of starting off the picture here at the Future Chefs. This last year, we able to, so do I turn the page or?
Or you can give somebody else the driver's seat if you want. I can drive. There you go. Works,
All right.
doesn't
It does. That's a fancy mouse. All right. So this last year we had 46 applicants we can only choose top 12. Up in the past, we've started doing this in 2006, where we have children actually design their menus and then submit them. And we've had as many as 100 students in a year at a single time want to come to build the recipe, come and cook it in my kitchen. When we first started, we had 20 different kids at a time in the kitchen. Well, 20 kids plus 12 staff plus 5 high school kids made it kind of hard. You guys, those who've been in my kitchen, know that that's a lot of space that we don't have. So we've knocked it down to the 12 this last year. And we were able to focus a little more on it, and it actually was pretty exciting. The judging this last year is based on originality, healthy, easy preparation, kid-friendly, plate presentation, and People's Choice Award. So that the people who actually come and participate and actually see the food, the kids actually present the food to the public, they get to choose part of their awards as well. We had this last year was Charlotte Kassler from 4th grade. Her recipe actually ended up winning the competition. She created quite an impressive little dish. And you can see the kids in the background there that we had quite a few people participate. And it was a lot of fun. We actually had 3 high school culinary students this last year and 2 dietetic interns. I actually had 2 at the same time this year. That actually was pretty fun because we had these guys actually help show them, which is even these younger kids, that they can be more if they want to, because food, we all eat. We all have to eat. We have to cook. We have to learn on concept. But if you want to look at make this as a future or a part of your life, this is an opportunity. So we had a lot of kids who actually who've never been in the kitchen before. So it was very exciting for them. They get to come to the base kitchen and cook it with real equipment, with real people, with real chefs, and see how that's like. It's pretty exciting. In fact, these kids here, the little girl in the bottom corner, her idea was Brussels sprouts, and cooking at home is not the same thing as cooking in one of my big ovens, because she ended up burning a lot of the Brussels sprouts to a point where she was in tears. But the team there, the high school kids and the interns really kind of kept her going, and she ended up, after all said and done, she ended up doing pretty well and won herself some pretty good prizes there. But it was a learning experience for a lot of the kids there, and I thought it was a great opportunity. Okay, so COVID was tough. It was, as you know, you guys have had your own difficulties. For us, it was interesting. With the very beginning, we actually had to serve in parking lots. We're serving on the back of trucks when we finally got authorization to do so, to make sure kids had food because they couldn't come to school at that time. A few weeks later, we were able to do multi-meal handouts, so kids can come get food for a week at a time. And we were giving thousands of meals away a week. By July 21st, July 2021, 2022, we actually had really figured out the system and got it down. That one year, we served 1.28 million meals in one calendar year out of Helena, which created a unprecedented record that we've probably never hit again. It was actually pretty amazing, with 571,000 breakfasts and 712,000 lunches in one calendar year out of the base kitchen. So, and that was all the food goes to the base kitchen, cold, dry, refrigerated, everything. And for those who've been in my base kitchen know that everything goes in by hand trucks. They can't put pallets to the back door. You can't do that stuff. So you think about each lunch weighs about a pound. That's over 1 million pounds we actually put through the food service in that one year. So as we started changing going forward from July 22 to June 23, that's when everything went back to normal, you might say. So we can no longer give out free meals. People had to start paying for meals. And we saw a drop of, from the year prior, of almost 500,000 meals. Because kids, it was a very confusing time. People weren't sure about free reduced applications, but they had to start going through that process. And they had to start paying for meals again because I couldn't give them away anymore. But by the end of the year, we actually managed to get breakfast up on average to about 31,000 breakfasts a month and 60,000 lunches in a month. And back in 2018, that's not me, right? We actually managed at the end of May this last year, we managed to get pretty close to, that mark, about 50,000, 57,000. So we actually managed to get numbers back up pretty close. Breakfast was still down because back in the day, we actually had a lot more breakfast programs at the elementary schools where they can get alternative breakfast models. This last year, we weren't able to get as many, but going forward, we hope that we have at least one at every school, some sort of an alternative program that's not just breakfast before school. So we're working on that, and I'll be working with the principals over the next few weeks on getting some of those programs up in place. And I believe those will kind of get us back up to date. Supply chain shortfalls. That was a big problem we had during this COVID time. We could not get what we were ordering. I may order this item. I couldn't even come close to getting that. I may order, like, say, $20,000 stuff in a week, and I may only get 13. Some of the stuff didn't make sense. Some of the stuff, it didn't meet the regulations. It was not legal in some places because you're supposed to have whole grain. We couldn't get that. It was tough. but we've managed to, Seduxo has really worked hard with a lot of our purveyors. In fact, I had a meeting this morning with the VP of the company and with Cisco and some other reps to see if we can make sure that this isn't going to be the case going forward. We got a lot of those shortfalls, hopefully have now been under control. So during COVID, the government decided to give out higher reimbursement rates for the meals, breakfast and lunch. So we were actually, as we were creating those meals, it was generating a lot of extra money. And during that time, we haven't spent a lot. So we've actually proposed, when I've met with Rex and Janelle, we've put together a program to hopefully over the next 2 or 3 years, utilize some of those funds for replacing equipment that's really old, broken, or we've never had it before because we can never afford it. So hopefully over the next few months, we'll go ahead and work on that program to be able to start applying that to things like bringing our ovens like this, and then pinging oven, not pinging oven, it's a combi oven. So it can actually bake, it can cook and do things. And that's some of the places like to maybe say Sierra Anderson, where I'm serving 6 lunches and all those kids. It's very hard with one little oven to make all that happen. So something like this, where I can cook 10 different racks at the same time, will help me provide a better service and cook closer to service time. And then of course I got to work with OPI because we have to make sure that it fits the USDA, has certain requirements of what you can use that money for. And it's actually quite interesting how that process works. But there's a lot of things we'd like to be able to go through, all the way from just basic trays to equipment itself to even to water softeners. Some of these schools where water is so hard, it literally destroys the dish machines and all the different equipment because it just creates, you just can't get it all off. So OPI actually has authorized us to do that as part of our plan. In-house baker. Last year we started hiring a part-time baker. He actually comes in, he bakes breads, bakes our rolls. We make cinnamon rolls. We got breakfast bars, breakfast muffins, muffin tops, things that we can actually go back to scratch type cooking so the kids are getting more of that non-packaged thing. So that's something we've spent some time on. This year we're hoping to put him as full-time. And we're going to incorporate, and again, come up with new ideas and new things that kids want to eat, as well as being healthy. It's a tough combination some days, and affordable. So that's some of the things we're working on, but that's one of our biggest pushes this next year is scratch cooking and our baker to be able to help us make some of those things we get to the kids. Helena High is, we're going to spend some time on it. Basically, when at a high school, we only get one lunch, both high schools, and as you know, but if we don't serve those kids in the first 15 minutes, they've usually gone somewhere else. So my goal is to try to service between 2 and 250 kids in 15 minutes, which is incredibly difficult, especially with the CNR facilities. It's kind of challenging for space is usually our biggest problem. So we've been restructuring things. Last year we tried a new thing at Sierra Anderson, which made the lines faster and easier so we can get the kids through quicker and still give them a variety and give them the fresh fruits and still have the salad bars, things like that. So we're doing that same concept to Helena High. We're going to be changing it around. I worked with Steve last year, showed him the design, and I said we're probably going to be doing this, but I never could pull it off at the end of the year, so we're going to start off the year with it this year. We're going to increase an a la carte program, which gives the kids outside of the lunch, outside of the main reimbursable line, so they can get other things that all still meet the Smart Snack Challenge. Of course, we're using the whole grain pizzas. We're using a lot of whole grain for all programs for the kids. Breakfast and lunch stations, we're going to have that outside of the lunch itself, so kids don't have to come all the way to the lunchroom. We've done it before COVID. We had places that were like over by the library, over by, the gym, places like that where kids can go and access breakfast and lunch. So hopefully it'll give the kids more opportunity. Instead of having to go to the lunchroom, we're going to go to them. And if that works out well, we'll try to open up more stations as time goes on. We're also going to try the high school, at that one high school first, is a pre-order system. They can actually use a QR code, click on it, go to a menu, click what they want, say who they are, and then they can order the menu. So at lunchtime, at any point in time, they can come and pick up the menu. As soon as their food, as soon as they pick it up, we then mark them off, and then we can charge their account at that point. Again, giving kids another way to be able to get access to food. A new composting washable program at that school. I was working at the end of the last year with Mrs. Van Eyslen's Green Group, and we're going to go into a composting program of some sorts. We're trying to work out the details, but we're also going to get away from the foam trays at this location. The foam plates going to go to a paper boat, a 3-pound boat, and we have the washable plastic tray, like you see, go to an a la carte station, say at the mall or something, where it's got a paper liner, so you're not throwing away all this foam in your landfills all the time. So they got the two options to help the kids out so they can still get their food, be quick, but yet we're not filling the landfill full of all the styrofoam. So a school food forum, a couple years back, we did this as an opportunity for parents and adults or anybody who has any kind of interest in schools wants to know how food service works. So we actually did this program where I open it up, where if the public can actually come, they can send questions to me or to our group, and we'd be able to answer questions in an open forum. It's kind of a back and forth. So we're going to looking at bringing that back. We were at a meeting earlier today, and we're looking at probably October 10th or 11th is the day we're looking at choosing for. We'll hold two. We'll have one during lunch, one during after maybe about 5, 6 o'clock, somewhere around that time frame, where people can actually that time either can do a virtual or they can actually come in person. We're still working on the actual location for that, but again, it's an opportunity for them to meet with not just me. And this time, we're going to have Harvest of the Month, we're going to have Snap Ed, and we're going to have Wellness. So people can have an understanding that schools are more than not really understand what all is involved in what we do in the school, especially when it comes to child nutrition. We'll have a facilitator this time. Right now, I'm working with the District Wellness Committee and the Helena Kids Nutrition Coalition to help me kind of be able to do this. It's not all by myself. I do have help out there with different people in different groups to be able to help me get through some of these things. That's kind of it for that one. Back scratch cooking. We're looking at 3 to 5 times a week. We're going to be making something out of the base kitchen, out of the big kettles. Right now, we're going to start off at 3 until we get the system going. Then it'll be like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because Tuesday, Thursday, we get supplies in. It's hard to get supplies in while you're trying to make the food at the same location. Kind of gets tough. So we're going to start off with that. We got new breakfast bars. Like I say, we got a variety of things we're trying to get we're making scratch from the location there. But I don't know if people know, but most locations, like all of our schools, make most of their food on site, even though these kitchens are officially a warming kitchen. They still make their own salads, their own sandwiches, their own cold sandwiches, their hamburgers, their hot dogs, their pizzas, all the stuff, whatever it is they're doing, most of it's made on site. But it's the stuff that comes like your tacos and your mashed potatoes and your thing and stuff that comes out of the base kitchen. Enchiladas and things like that, we make those there and then we ship them out every morning. So when most people don't realize that, but it actually, most stuff we have is not packaged, but we do have some things. Breakfast is one of the harder items to get away from. That's why we're trying to focus more on those breakfast bakery things or breakfast sandwich things or things like that. Special dietary needs. I've been doing this 30 years with Seduxo, and I've never seen so many varieties of kids have so many allergies. Everything from, I saw one during the summertime, red eye number 40. I've seen it only a couple times in my life, but during the summertime, as part of our program, we actually had to sign up for it. I saw just in that program alone, everything from kiwi, of course, to red eye number 40, to avocados, to all kinds of stuff you can think of. Not just your basic, your celiacs, your glutens, and your dairy-free. We're seeing all kinds of stuff that we have to be able to accommodate these meals for children. And sometimes they're more than one. That's the tough one. When a kid has both, he can't have gluten, he can't have cheese, he can't have these things here. All of a sudden, well, he's eating corn chips and ham, I guess. So we try to make sure that, and then you got the kid says, I don't like that. Okay, so we're working on very hard to work with parents. I communicate with parents directly. We work with the nurses to make sure to get kids a variety. But we do spend a lot of time and effort to make sure kids have a variety at all locations, at all schools, all the time. We also have a meatless menu. We're seeing more and more vegan, vegetarian. So we're trying to make sure there's a variety where kids can still get their protein, still get their complex carbs, still get the things they need, but still give them what they want. We have a lot of multiple milk alternatives. We're seeing more and more of that. So we have everything from rice milk to soy milk to, different varieties of things where kids can still qualify in that milk. Because juice, people think, well, just give them juice. Juice is not a substitute for milk. That's not how that works. So again, trying to educate the public is also another thing we try to do as well. I don't know if people know this or not, but each of the nurses, all they have to do is contact me, and I provide for free juice, crackers, granola bars, anything they may need where a child shows up, says, I'm hungry, I can't make it to lunch, and they hand them a granola bar, or they hand them a juice, or they feel they get a little shaky, they'll give them something like to help get them through until the meal period. All they have to do is contact me, and I actually provide those to say, Robert, I need these, and I'll ship it to you the next day, so you give it. But it doesn't cost me anything. Seduxo pays for all that. We also work closely with the nurses to provide carb counts for children. People don't realize that makes a big difference. When the kid only weighs 40 pounds and he's, type 2 diabetes, he needs to know exactly what he ate and what those carbs are in order to know if he has to have a shot, what exactly the amount is, and whatnot. We also work with school parents to create menus with unique allergies. And I don't know if everybody knows or not, but our school district has been a nut-free school district for going on 17 years, I think. So we don't even offer nuts anywhere in the program within the school site. During the summertime, we do offer nuts like peanut butter for kids, because there's still a lot of kids who do like peanut butter, but it's an opportunity they can not have it. But in the schools, we don't offer it. Going green in most locations. We have washable trays and silverware at all elementary schools. The high schools, we are starting to remove the foam plates and replace them with the boats and the plates, the baskets. I'm starting off at Helena High, and hopefully by Christmas I'll have capital done. New washable bowls we're starting to offer instead of the foam bowls. I just need to get those in. Middle schools are next on the list for trying to go green because we're trying to get plates. We actually did it about 8 years ago. Our problem was that the kids would take the plates and they never come back. And all of a sudden we started off with 400, we're down to 8. So, okay, what happened to this? So it makes it kind of expensive after a while. But again, trying to come up with plans and how to keep those in-house will ultimately help the environment as well as help the kids understand about waste and how that works. Teaching in the classroom, one thing I love about my job is not just in the lunchroom. I'm also out teaching kids about programs, teaching kids about classes. I'm out there doing things from, I know Barb caught me this last year being the muffin man out there, Jim Darcy, to I do all kinds of things with the SAC program. We work with those guys. I actually do a training for those as well for their so they don't have to from their local health department. I actually do that for them usually in January. I'm a national ServSafe instructor and proctor, so I actually teach that at a national level so they get certification for my staff. I've actually done it for other things from Carroll College to other people in town. We do a lot of things. I used to do things with DECA, but during COVID, I didn't get to go back much, so hopefully this year we can pick that up again, and I get to help work with those guys. The culinary 3 there at Capitol, like to come through and we show them how a base kitchen works. Then I explain them about how food service manager works, and we go through the process. I actually go to their classroom. We talk to those guys there. Gifts and Talent program, I've done things with those guys for years, either from borrowing equipment to showing them how to do table etiquette to what the nutrition is for chocolate. That was one day. That was kind of fun. So we also, I have dietetic interns every year. I get 2 to 3 who come through, and I actually spend 2 weeks with them. This last year, I had 3, one from the New England something, and I actually had her for almost 6 weeks. But I go through and I devote my time and effort to kind of show them how it works in schools, how nutrition works, and I actually do get paid, but I donate that money to the school district to help with the program for that. All right, summer program. So this last year, we it took me a while. It took me 5 to 6 weeks to negotiate with OPI because the laws changed. They learned some things last summer because they tried to go back to completely 100% pre-COVID. The numbers dropped off so bad that people weren't participating. They couldn't afford the programs. They were going to start shutting them down. So they decided halfway through the year last year to hand out the meals like they had during COVID, just 3 meals. Just come up, pick it up, and you can have your meal, which helped us, but it was still tough because people already created their habits during the summertime. So this year they decided to make some changes based on rural and urban. We qualify because we're under 50,000 for the city of Helena as rural. So the rules changed, like Billings and Great Falls or Missoula, they can't because they actually have more in the city proper. Now, in doing so, OPI said that the concept was we couldn't just go forward because you actually have more people than that in this area, but the way the laws are, they still work back and forth, and it allowed me to do multi-meal programs. Some schools could do breakfast and lunch at a site. Some schools had to have at least, and they called it a non-congregate site and then congregate. Non-congregate means they don't have to sit there and eat, because the rules before used to be, if you want a lunch, you get one lunch, one meal, you have to eat in front of me in this area once the site's been qualified for every meal period in the summertime. That's hard to do these days. So we were able to work it out where I still had 2 of those sites. One at Helen Middle School, one at Broadwater. But then at the park and the library, I was able to do a mega meal, which we designed as breakfast and lunch in the same sack and give it to each child each day. And then the weekends, I can give them weekend sacks. And then I had sites where like Warren, Fort Georgians, and upside of Helena High with that Sharon Park there, we're able to reach those kids, and we actually give them on Mondays, we give them 3 days of the meals, breakfast and lunch, and on Thursdays, we give them 4 days of the meals, so they collect all 7 days, so 14 meals per child per week. And we were doing over 230 of those a day of just that one. This last year, right now I'm still serving some lunch programs and breakfast programs, but when I'm done this year, I'll actually be just short of 60,000 meals this summer, which is phenomenal. Pre-COVID, we were shooting about 20 to 24,000, and during COVID, it did pretty well, but this last year we were like 30,000, so we've almost doubled since last year because of these multiple programs. It would have been easy for us to say, if we can't do it, fine, let's just serve this one meal, that's it. But we fought and we talked about it, we had to work with him, and got it approved. But in doing so, we had to create some new rules, including if you guys saw, we had to do the children have to pre-register their names because they had to have each site, so I can guarantee that Johnny is not getting from this site and going over here and getting meals at the same time. That was the concept behind it, because apparently it happened across the country. But in doing so, we had to have 2,500 kids register for this program. So it was amazing how many kids were actually eating on a regular basis. So that's kind of about that. And I guess that comes to the end. So any questions you guys have? You know, anytime throughout the year, you can call me with any questions anytime. I'll do whatever I can to help you. But what do you guys have for me today? Yes.
Thank you, Robert. We've worked together for many years, and I just want to thank you for how many kids you fed over all the years that you've been in this position. We've been working on childhood hunger statewide, and just not having been in that school nutrition world and then learning from you and other food service across the state, you're just a model, and I appreciate your commitment, especially with your limited resources. And I just want to personally thank you because my daughter was in elementary school, participated in that Future Chef. She was watching that like Master Chef Junior, but Robert was much kinder than Gordon Ramsay. And it really, it just really expanded her baking and cooking in our home. One of the things I want to ask you, and you know, I'm kind of on the outside more now, but I know there have been conversations over the years about expanding your central kitchen or having it in a new location, because I mean, it is quite a feat of what you do for all our kids all year round. So have there been conversations as of late, and maybe people on the board also know about this? I'm just kind of curious where that's going.
Go ahead.
Well, I can tell you that actually, the first time I actually have hope about that actually might happen. I might see it in my lifetime. But no, we actually have made some good conversations, and right now they're in the middle of working with some of the designers, and they've been going through meetings, and they're looking at designing not just a base kitchen, but trying to incorporate it to more of a skills center and a base kitchen, which ultimately I think is a very smart idea, because you're more likely to be able to get a lot more buy-in when you realize that food service is important. Understand that's for sure, but also having these other categories that we put into a building, if we're going to be able to pass a bond on something like that, that's where you're going to be able to reach more with that. So I'm kind of looking forward to it, and they're actually been working on that for the last year. So if you want to go ahead and expand on that.
No, I think you did a great job. There's been discussion, we all recognize the fact that he's working out of a shoebox, literally, and the feat out of that is pretty remarkable in what you've been able to produce. We do have some buildings across our district that potentially could be a central kitchen, but they're older and take a lot of work to put money into them, and we still have an older building with a kitchen in it. So if the master facility planning project is going to par, what we think would happen is there'd be a recommendation from that project that we would add some newer facilities, and then, as Robert mentioned, have some sort of a central kitchen that also expands into career and technical education, where a pathway, if you will, that we can share. Now, remember, my mom was a school cook for 20, 25 years. In the day, you didn't share your kitchen with anyone. You locked it down, you walked away at night. Those times have changed. And I think we start sharing our resources with our students and then what we can do across the district. So I'm hopeful as well. I'm excited. On a side note, the reason why he's able to produce what he does is not just because he's knowledgeable, but the energy level that Robert brings. When he said he had 20 slides, I'm not sure if he's going to get it done. I forgot. He will. He's energetic, and we are thankful to have you a part of our district. So well done.
And I was trying to talk slow too, so you guys could follow along.
You did great.
I just love what I do, so it makes it easy to do my job. So any other questions that I can help anybody with, or anything else?
Trustee
Yes.
Armstrong.
Robert, I just want to thank you. I know these past several years have been quite challenging, but you have definitely had a can-do attitude and risen above all the chaos and all the new regulations, and have really been very flexible in adapting to meet the need for healthy food of this community despite all the obstacles. So I'm just very, very appreciative of that.
Good. Thank you. I appreciate that. We spend a lot of time and a lot of effort, and I got a good crew. I mean, obviously, I can't do it by myself, but a good crew who's dedicated. I mean, what they can do and how many hours I give them and what I can pay them, they still come back year after year, and I have very little turnover, which is another good important thing, because I try to take care of them, they take care of me, we all take care of the kids. So, all right. Anything else I can do for you?
Well done.
All right. Thank you
very
guys.
much,
Appreciate it.
Mr. Worthy. Okay, up next, Superintendent Welts with your report.
Tough act to follow.
Yeah.
So we'll go through again. This time of year, it's a little slower. So my superintendent report will be a bit smaller and probably as quick. But there's some real things that need to be recognized. And so for the new student reps and trustees, I do three things here. I go through a recognition. We'll talk about new business, some outreach where we've been, and there's always another in case something came up after we posted our agenda that I can bring up to the board. But right now, I'm going to work backwards from the top down on this one. It was a very busy time of the year last spring. I think it was spring, and HEF had been reached out from Boeing and said, hey, we have some potential grant money if you're interested for Helena Public Schools. Lisa and her team were super busy with the Helena Education Foundation. I don't remember quite what was going on, but the Boeing official said, and by the way, you have like 30 minutes to fill this out. It felt like 30 minutes. So it was 3 or 4 days, if not less. And so they finished their project and filled out a grant quickly and thoroughly with the help of Mr. McKay. And I would like to thank them for their efforts partnering with Boeing and to the tune of about $100,000 to the Helena Public Schools. And so we had a nice kickoff and ceremony at Helena High this summer, you may have seen. But a lot of that effort then is back to Lisa and HEF for their efforts and coordinating with Boeing. It's been a really great partnership with Boeing, and really Jim Weber have started that years ago, but it's expanding across our district. Also, this is a very busy time for the business office. Remember, we're closing out the 22-23 budget school year. We go July 1, June 30th. Not only are we closing out those books, we are also building a budget that will be presented tonight for the 23-24. And so it's been super, super busy and a really tight number of staff that runs out of our business office. And so I'm thankful for Janelle and her team for putting together what we have this evening. Remember, this meeting has been bounced 1 week because we're waiting for those tax files to come in last minute. And so she's been frantically pulling numbers together. Also, this time of the year in summertime, Todd Burrell and Rob Brewer, they've worked magic. This is a busy time when staff and students are not necessarily in our buildings. We get a lot of work done, and so the efforts out of their department needs to be recognized as well. And then our teachers and our staff, they dedicated their time over the summer, and we provided a lot of professional development. Quite frankly, I think we have a 3-day math professional development going on at Bryant. Jocelyn Davidson has organized that along with Caitlin Hess, Allison Balboni, and Barb Ridgway sponsored a lot of choreographed our professional development this summer. That being said, I'm going to say Jeremy Bullock Safety Conference or Summit twice, one in recognition. First of all, we had Robert with Sodexo providing food facilities. We walked through a week before in Central Elementary, the safety conference, that's where it was. We walked through a week prior to the start of the summit, and Todd looked in my eyes and he knew that I was thinking this place is not ready. All hands on deck, and 4 days later it was spotless. And so their efforts and coordination of getting that place ready for 250 to 300 people that visited our district was commendable. Technology, Gary and his team making sure that the tech needs in a company. Conferences just don't happen, people don't show up and things happen, right? There's a lot of work behind the scenes. And so what I'm trying to address is that my team did a lot of work getting ready for that conference and represented Helena Public Schools, also the city of Helena in that conference. And we're thankful for their work. Lastly, the recognition on the Jeremy Bullock Safety Summit is Barb Ridgway. She was really the point contact. And so they reached out to her and said, do you think you're interested in hosting a conference? And Barb said yes, and then she come down and she said, uh-oh, I said yes. And then we figured it out from there, but she's the one that really was the point of contact for that. Lastly, I'd like to thank the Bullock family for entrusting us to pull this off. Robin and Bill Bullock, remember that they lost their son on the playground in Butte years ago, and that's how this all started with the gun shooting. So we're thankful that they were willing to come out of Butte. They've been at the Copper King for several years, and now it's here. I do want to do an after action with them and see how it turned out and what their thoughts are, and if we can continue to keep hosting it. On the new business, our administration in the SAM, School Administrators of Montana, we went through our summer conference, Jeremy Bullock Safety Summit, as just talked about, August 8th and 9th, and that's where I got a reprieve from the grandkids, and I actually said I had to go back to work, and then went back and saw the grandkids, but it was a good break. I want to thank Karen Ogden, and just I sent it out earlier, and there was a couple of revisions, but that 2023-24 community calendar, and really a year in review. A lot of work went into that, and so you'll see the revised version sitting in front of you, and we'll have that from print here shortly. But I'm proud of the work that's been done there. HEA and Helen School District mediation update. We do have mediation on August 5th, and another time slot, I think, on the 27th of August is scheduled as well. Not a lot to report. More after those mediation meetings. I talked a little bit about the professional development that's going on. It's remarkable the number of things that have happened over the summer, and the teachers that have presented or been presented at our professional development. But Jocelyn Davison, Caitlin Hess, Barb, and Allison need to be recommended or commended for their work there. We have a facilities master planning meeting coming up, and that is in August, I believe. And so really we took that July time off a little because of the number of people that are out on vacation. So budget consensus, master facility plans all start to kick back up again coming in August. We had an all administrator meeting Monday. I could say it was a meeting, but it was more than just a meeting. And then we'll have another one on Friday. But I will tell you that we did a team building activity Monday. We partnered with Show Dare and had about 25 to 30 of our administrators and directors at the ropes course. And so we did a lot of work around team building and trusting. It was really well perceived. Learned a lot about my team, learned a lot about myself. 40 feet in the air on a rope is not necessarily fun, but you push through and you kind of overcome your fears with the help of others. And so we enjoyed our time, but I think we learned a lot from that, something we can carry into the school year. I'm still working on the Monday and Tuesday. Welcome back. We're not going to come together in one large group. I want to honor our staff's time. As a high school science teacher, I knew that every minute counted. And when you have 2 days to prepare for students that are going to hit 30 of them, they're going to be in your classroom, you want to make sure everything's ready. And so I'm going to honor that time, and we're going to rotate our central office. We're going to get on a bus and we're going to go to every building so that we can honor more time for staff to be in their classrooms getting ready for students, because that's really what's most important. I will tell you a little bit about the art space study, affordable housing for artists and workspace for artists here in Helena, and they were interested in the May Butler building. I don't know how that turned out, but they have been doing audits across to Helena and finding affordable housing for artists, and it could be a wide range. And so we allowed them to, at no cost to us, to look at some of our facilities that could be of interest, and they looked at several, and one is the May Butler Center. So I'll keep you updated on what that looks like as we move forward. Other than that, you can see through the outreach, there's quite a bit, and there's a lot coming up, especially at the start of the school, media, both visual and radio, and print, and then a lot of outreach with our social sector as well. With that, Madam Chair, that's superintendent report for tonight.
Thank you, Superintendent Wells. Are there any board comments or questions regarding Superintendent Wells's report?
I did have one
Trustee Armstrong.
question. You said 23-24 reorganize our central office team. Do you want to?
Go right by that one. Yeah. So
Okay.
with
You can just share with the public.
the update there, Trustee Armstrong, is that with the loss of our assistant superintendent at elementary, obviously there's duties there that need to be reassigned. And so that got spread out through the rest of the organization. And so we had put together a spreadsheet in our organizational chart. And I think I sent that out as a draft to the org chart to you as trustees to pursue, to look through. I'll have an updated version of that and plus a spreadsheet of everybody's responsibilities, but it took some work to make sure that all of our responsibilities were covered with a pretty thin crew.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that to attention.
Further questions? Okay, seeing no further questions, I'll go ahead and move on to general public comment. This is the time for comment on public matters that are not on the agenda. Public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues at this time or you'll be ruled out of order. Just a reminder that the board cannot enter into a back and forth discussion during general public comment. So if I do see people from the public, and thank you for being here, if you want to give public comment and you want to talk about the lease proposals for Ray Bjork or 7th Avenue Gym, there will be time for public comment on those when we get to that point in the agenda, or any other item action or action item, finances or collective bargaining unit. So is there any public comment at this point on for items that are not on the agenda? Candace and Gary, any online?
See,
comments?
either.
Okay, good. We'll go ahead and move forward. First of all, we have the consent action items, and we had no adjustments to our agenda. So I would entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the consent action items 1 through 7 as presented in the agenda packet.
Motion by Trustee Hindoin. Is there a second?
I
would
so
second.
Never mind.
There we go. Second by Trustee Satry.
Gotcha.
Is there any public comment on the consent items? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 1, 2, 3. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, new business. The first two, Superintendent Reltz is going to introduce those to us. Those would be, we'll take them individually. That would be the lease proposal for Ray Bjork and the lease proposal for 7th Avenue Gym.
Yeah, I'll call Facilities Director, Mr. Verrill, up as he's making his way up. I'll tee him up. So the first one is Ray Bjork, lease proposal. He'll go through and he has a slide deck prepared for you. Remember that we have a couple of buildings and I think what's important is that we've been working through a $6 million shortfall. And so when we were able to relocate services and the programs within Ray Bjork, the opportunity arose that there's a way to generate some revenue. And through that, so we put out for requests for proposals and people that are organizations that may be interested in the buildings that we have at this time. And that's 7th Ave Gym and Ray Bjork. We went through a process, and I want to thank Todd and his team for preparing, looking through, and supporting this initiative as we bring this to your attention this evening. Remember, we also had, this is the second time we've heard this. We had this at our facilities meeting this last month.
And just to piggyback on top of that, the facilities committee narrowed that down to two proposals for each of the buildings.
That's correct.
That
Yeah,
we'll be looking at tonight.
Good point. The directive to me was that to bring the top two proposals to this meeting.
Thank you.
Yep. Mr. Verrill.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you all, Board of Trustees and folks visiting here tonight. As is my tradition, I will be presenting a PowerPoint today because I love doing these. I am Todd Verrill. I'm the Director of Support Services, or some people call me the Director of Facilities. And I will be talking about the lease proposals for Ray Bjork Learning Center and 7th Avenue Gym. Oh, did I hit the right button? Okay, here's the agenda we're going to talk about. First thing I'm going to talk about is the methodology that we chose to evaluate the proposals. And then we'll talk about the Ray Bjork lease proposals and then the superintendent's recommendation. Then we'll do the same thing for 7th Ave. And I'll wrap it up with a summary Anytime you have questions, just interrupt and we'll go. The evaluation methodology we chose was a decision support matrix. The cabinet came together, we read all the proposals, and then we decided that this method was good because a decision support matrix allows us to analyze several similar options. And the way we compare them against common criteria, and what it does is it quantifies and prioritizes those criteria based on the weighting that we give them. And then it calculates a weighted average. And I did that in Excel, and I built a little structure like this and filled it in, and it came up with an answer, so to speak, based on what we thought was important criteria. These are the 4 that we selected in order of importance, and I'll show you on the next slide how we weighted them. So first was alignment with district. Let me back up. I'll show you how we weighted them later. I can't remember if these are the exact order. Alignment, financial considerations, maintenance and improvements proposed, and then the community impact. Okay, this is how we did it. Relative to each other, I chose, because 100 is an easy number, to use 100 for the total possible weight. You can do whatever you want. You can make it 1,000, you can make it 1,000,000, you can make it 10. Doesn't matter. What's important is that how you weight them. Financial considerations, we weighted the most at 35 or 35%. Alignment, 25%, maintenance improvements, 25%, and then community impact, 15%, for a total of 100%. Like I said, that's not the important part. How they measure up relative to each other is what the important part is. And I'm not going to go through the whole numbers and all that on how we came to, because that's kind of how the sausage is made. The superintendent will give you his recommendation after I go through the proposals for each. So moving over to Ray Bjork now. The 2 proposals that I'm going to talk about today are Rocky Mountain Development Council proposal for the entire building and St. Peter's Health. There was 2 other ones. Rocky Mountain Development Council had a proposal for part of the building, and then there was STEAM of Central Montana, or Snapology was another proposal we had. The committee decided that those 2 were not viable, so I am not including those today. I'm just talking about the first 2. All right, Rocky Mountain Development Council. No, that's not the south wing only, it's the entire thing. Oh no, I messed this up. I gotta get my computer. All right, I got the wrong one in there. I apologize. I'm gonna move to proposal number 2, and then I'll bring this one up afterwards. Okay, let's talk about St. Peter's Health first. All right, my apologies. St. Peter's Health. Their proposed use for the entire building is a child care facility, which will consolidate their 2 Pete's Place child care facilities. It's what was noted in there. Some of the families, not all of the families that are serviced by Pete's Place, are St. Peter's employees. So there is a percentage of them that are kids that are not employees of St. Pete's, which I thought was important. The initial estimate right now is that they'll serve between 200 and 250 children. And ultimately, they would like to expand and develop into a comprehensive, affordable early childhood development center. The occupancy schedule, they would like to execute a lease by the end of next month, assuming they're able to complete their due diligence and consult with contractors, so on and so forth, and develop their plan. The board of directors will have to approve the capital investment and improvements that they propose, and will have to negotiate final terms with the board. They anticipate 6 to 9 months of improvements of the facility, with the hopes of starting their business in the summer of 2024. They are proposing a 10-year initial lease with 3 renewal periods of 3 years each. So that 19 years is considered the term. They want a guaranteed renewal opportunity, and they are suggesting that we can only terminate for non-payment. If we do terminate after 10 years, but before the end of the full 19-year term, they're proposing an early termination fee. They are not considering at this time a partial facility lease, but they may look at subleasing some of the facility if the need arises from another organization. They're proposing between $12 and $14 a square foot for a total annual payment of between $260,000 and $312,000. They're asking for a zero escalation rate. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't necessarily understand, but my understanding is if there's a total investment, help me out on this one. If something fails on the building, for instance, the roof collapses, HVAC fails or whatever, they're suggesting that they are only going to pay a certain amount for that we should be responsible for those type of catastrophic failures.
Correct.
So their maximum investment, they're suggesting that they won't go above that. They want us to pay for that. They will assume all utilities, taxes, assessments, and they will maintain the property, which means plowing snow, custodial, landscaping, minor repair, so on and so forth. Hitting the wrong button here. Okay, the improvements that they're suggesting are to meet DPHHS and City of Helen requirements and are those types of improvements. So on our deferred maintenance plan, Ray Bjork, the total estimated deferred maintenance on that building is $1.8 million. About $500,000 in HVAC, about $300,000 in electrical, and about $470,000 in roofing. They are suggesting that their estimate is between $3 and $3.5 million for all of those improvements, which include commercial kitchen appliances, which was not discussed in the deferred maintenance plan. So they are proposing a larger investment than our deferred maintenance is currently standing at. Okay, let me, any questions on any of the improvements that they are, let me finish this one first.
Did you want questions?
Yeah, any questions
Trustee
about this
Armstrong.
slide, about any of the improvements?
No, but on the one before it, when it talked about you can only terminate for non-payment and then a termination fee, was that they were going to pay us a termination fee?
No, I believe we would pay them a termination fee. Is my understanding.
She had the same.
If it's less than the 19 years of the term.
But if there's, the only way we can terminate it is non-payment,
Sure.
and then there's no fee.
It would
Right.
be some sort of termination for other than non-payment.
Right.
I think
Okay.
what they're
Right.
talking about is.
I just wanted to make sure on that.
Yes, yes.
Right, now, then that's accurate. It would be
Okay.
a termination for some reason other than non-payment and it would be a mechanism for them to recover some of the investment they made in the property in anticipation of having up to 19 years of.
That makes sense.
That's how I took it.
And then in terms of if we lease a building out and they're going to do maintenance on it, do we have
Can
any?
you get closer to the mic?
Sorry. We're going to lease a building out and they're going to do maintenance on it. Do you ever build into the contracts like an ability just to make sure that whatever they're doing is meeting code, so at the end of the lease, we're not?
Yes, I
Not
think that
hanging
would
out.
be beneficial for us to ensure that whatever they do is code compliant
Absolutely.
and also compatible with other
With our
things we
mission?
do in our school.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
instance, the type of roofs we put in, the type of HVAC systems we put in, those types of things. We want them to be compatible. It's still our building.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably would be since their proposed usage is childcare, but I just want to make sure that we're covered. Okay, that was it.
Can you forward this one yet? Okay, I think I have control again here. Uh-oh. Okay. Sir, you want to talk about this? This
Do
is
you want
yours.
to go back to the other proposal?
Oh, let me. Crap! I'm messing this one up. I'm out of practice. We missed a. Okay, can you go to the next one now? Buried the lead, or what's the opposite of that? Okay, we're gonna switch over to the other one, and it's the correct proposal this time. The entire school. Okay, I gotta find this one. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm gonna skip through all these. That was the first one. Here's the second one. We call it Rocky 2. Okay. They are proposing Head Start and childcare, lease of the entire facility. The north wing will be used for Head Start, 64 children total. South wing will be used for a licensed childcare. It hasn't been identified yet who that childcare provider is, but they will operate underneath the Rocky license and provide after-school services. And the numbers will vary based on the ages they're able to attract and also regulations. They will still provide public school preschool speech services, and they will still hold family events for enrolled members after hours. Their occupancy schedule, they want to start at the start of the school year, which is coming up very soon. They proposing to occupy the school all year with just limited occupancy in the north wing during the summer. Their weekly schedule will be very similar to our school schedule. As you see, they're going to be operating a little bit later in the day because of the childcare requirements. The lease, they're proposing an initial 5-year lease, the option to extend the lease at the end of the initial term. Now, the lease has to adhere to some of their standards, and it's this section 1305-50, third-party lease and occupancy agreement. If you want to look in the RFP, there's a bunch of language in there which specifies what that is. The payment they're suggesting is $13,000 a month for a total of $165,000 a year. They will be responsible for utilities, maintenance, minor repair, custodial, parking lot, so on and so forth. Very similar to the proposal from
St. Peter's Health.
St. Peter's as far as maintenance of the building. So improvements. I took this directly out of their proposal because I think it's important. So any improvements or major renovation with a collective cost equaling or exceeding $250,000 will result in federal interest in the building, which must be filed with the clerk of the court. What that means is if federal money is used to improve that building to the tune of $250,000 or more, they will have an interest in that building on the, I guess it's a lien.
The deed.
What it's considered. Is that true, sir? Is it deed essentially what it is?
Kind of, yeah.
Sort of.
Title. Couldn't
They-
foreclose it.
They are not proposing any improvements at this time. So that's just in the case that a boiler goes down or a roof has to be replaced, which both would cost over $250,000 easily. There would be a federal interest if federal money is used for that. Any improvements that they would do in the future would require a pretty lengthy, about a 6-month turnaround time for their board, and through Head Start proper to approve that. Oops, let me back up one. Clicked it too many times. Okay, now let's switch back to the other one, Gary. All right.
You following this?
I'll stop touching it. All right, here we go. All right. Now I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent.
Ready for me?
I'm ready for you.
All right, so trustees, here's the recommendation based on what you heard before you. Again, this is not a personal decision. This is purely business and a responsibility to our taxpayers. We started this endeavor and an initiative around understanding that we have a general fund deficit. And so I get the concern with partnerships that we've may have had for a while, but what I'm trying to do is find a way to balance our budget and get to a place where we can save programs, and doing that is a revenue source. So that's really that's why this was weighted a little heavier on the financial side. That's the mission that we set out, based on a yearly income of anywhere from $260,000 to $310,000 with $3.3 to $3.5 million infrastructure. That is important pieces for us, and that helps us because that revenue source will go into a rental fund that we have in the district that can then offset the burden of our general fund around the maintenance and custodial costs throughout the district. And so a revenue of $300,000 or $260,000 helps our general fund. And for that reason, my mission is to get us solvent in our budgetary needs. And that is the reason why I'm recommending St. Peter's Health be awarded the opportunity to build a lease agreement. That's the next step, right? We'll have to move into a lease agreement conversation. And that's my recommendation.
Board questions and comments.
I had a question, Todd. You mentioned like St. Peter's was proposing some sort of like child education program,
A daycare.
just daycare.
Daycare. Yes.
Correct.
So whatever they're proposing, as we make some shifts into pre-K or something like that, it's not going to compete with anything we're doing.
I don't believe it's going to compete
Okay.
there. I think there's enough. There's a lot of variables in which the decision now is what proposal we're accepting or what one we'll approve to move forward, and then the conversations about what it looks like will enter then. I look forward to either one of having some sort of an option for us to help understand what that curriculum might look like.
Trustee Satry, did you have any questions or comments?
I don't think I have any questions. I will offer a comment that I also offered at our committee meeting about this issue. And, I understand that having more childcare from St. Peter's Health is, serving a need in our community. I also understand that there's a lot of financial advantages here, it appears anyway, given what they're proposing, not only with, the amount that they're willing to pay per square foot, per year, but also then making this pretty huge investment in this building that, all things working out, we will continue to own. So I understand the financial appeal here for sure. But I still have to say that I'm uncomfortable about that being, the deciding factor, or maybe not even the deciding factor. I just need to raise the question about our obligation to this organization that really has been in a relationship with Helena Public Schools, in a relationship that is significant. It is distinctive from the kind of relationship more broadly to the community that, we have just because we're all living in Helena with St. Peter's. So it still concerns me that, I'm trying to figure out, yes, we're in a budget deficit. I get the appeal. But I don't want to make the decision entirely on the basis of just, because it's a better financial deal. We have this relationship with this organization, Head Start, and they do feed our system, the public system. So I will stop there, and I'm just wondering if anybody wants to respond to that concern. So thank you.
Madam Chair,
Trustee Ndoye.
I think Trustee Satry was looking for a response from a board member or from the administration, but
I certainly can.
It could be from anybody. I just want us to think about this and talk about it publicly, kind of respond to this issue. So this question.
Thanks, Trustee Satry. And I'm going to jump in front of Trustee Hindoin just to say that by no means does this mean that I don't value, or we as an organization don't value the purpose and the need in our community around Head Start. And it doesn't sever our ties. It does mean that we'll work finding locations within our own facilities if we have them. We'll continue to have that relationship. And I understand that it strains it, but for me, it's there's multiple factors to this, and I don't want this one decision and my recommendation personally to say that I don't value Head Start. It's just that given where we're at today, this is my recommendation. It might be different if it weren't in a budget deficit, but at this point, I think for the fiduciary responsibility that we have to our taxpayers, that this is the right decision, this is the right recommendation, and that's what I'm moving forward.
Did you want to add to that?
I do have a follow-up question to that, which would be what will be our relationship to Head Start as we look forward? I mean, how will we sort of, keep that relationship strong, and, even help it to be stronger?
Yeah, I think that as we move forward through facilities, one, we'll keep the communication lines open. Right now that Rossiter has room for a Head Start, and so we'll see what their need looks like and how many spaces they need, and we'll work with them to find those locations. And it could be a room here in one building and another one somewhere else, but it doesn't mean that we're going to stop our communications and the need for their services and what they do in our community. So I think that's important, is that we'll continue that relationship. We're not going to stop. It's just going to look different.
Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I guess I respond, for a second. And I certainly appreciate the considerations that go into that, long-term relationship we've had with Head Start and the profoundly important role they play in the community. But I mean, this is one area where we literally have a specific, discrete statutory duty to hold as trustees of the district's property. It is a fiduciary duty. It's called out separately by statute to hold the district's property in trust for its schools and its children. And I mean, from my estimation, the financial consideration criteria on the weighting schedule was probably underweighted relative to where it should have been. I mean, at the end of the day, and to the superintendent's point, I mean, we are staring down the barrel of some really tough times for our budget and our taxpayers. And with the prospect of, a lease proposal like this that's going to generate a significant amount of extra revenue that I understand we have a lot of flexibility with what we can do with, and on top of that, maintain the building, and not only maintain it, but improve it as an asset of the school district over time. I just think that, that's from a matrix standpoint, and again, from that kind of specific duty we have relative to the property of the school district, that it's almost, impossible not to have those be kind of the driving considerations, I think.
Thank you, Trustee Hindoin. Any questions or comments, Trustee Beaver?
At some time later, we will discuss the lease agreements. Is that, and we will at that time propose specifics within the contract?
Correct. Yeah, this action tonight is simply to allow me to move forward with opening the conversation with the lease agreement, and that will come to board for approval as well.
Okay, but does St. Peter's realize then that this is school district property and that they must abide by school district policies?
The answer is yes, and I think that can be spelled out more specific within the lease agreement. And so if there's parameters in which specific policies that we want them to adhere to, we certainly will have those spelled out. Not necessarily, and maybe that's a conversation we need to have as a board. What policies are we referring to?
Well, I mean, do we have to go through each individual policy for them then? I mean, do we want them to withhold the policy of no smoking on that property?
Certainly. I think those are all pieces that school district property that we're going to, drugs, alcohol, that the pieces of those are of nature will be inherently, there's no smoking, no alcohol on promise or on the premise. Absolutely. I think we'll have to run through those, but that should be through. We're not the only district that ever leased property to outside entity, and so our legal team will have that already spelled out in probably a template of lease agreements throughout the state, and we'll use our legal counsel to make sure that those are spelled out appropriately. Is that your understanding, Mr. Hindoin?
Yeah.
I think that becomes much more evident though in our next consideration for 7th Avenue Gym. That being adjacent to Central School, I think all of our policies, in my opinion, would be.
Agree. Yeah, that's a good point, Trustee Beaver. And I think that that's been running through my brain as I've been thinking about facilities and in housing. That's a different domain, right? So if we're offering if we get to a point where we're, as I talked about, the safe schools or the art space housing project that could go into some of our facilities. Well, if it's a home and has a refrigerator and people are doing things after hours and had a glass of wine perhaps, and that's on school property. And that's not uncommon right now. I know that Missoula, Great Falls, and some of them are using their older facilities to combat the housing problem. And we may be in that same spot. And so we'll have to have those conversations of what does it look like to lease to private homeowners and or organizations, what are our to-dos and what we cannot allow on our property. And I think those are predominantly spelled out, but we will make sure that that's done.
I'm comfortable with the proposal now for St. Peter's, with the exception of their possibility of subletting. We need the revenue at the present time, and if we get to the point that they are going to, if they get to the point where they're going to sublet, I think that any revenue that is proposed over the, what is it, 12 to 14 dollars per square foot, I think we ought to share in that possibility, so that if we could take 50% of that, they take 50% of it if they sublet to someone for a greater amount.
Yeah, for purposes now, and I think that's part of our lease agreement. When we build that, we'll have those conversations tonight. I'm going to back off any proposals of what it looks like to sublease that. Right now, I'm just looking at the major entity of either Rocky Mountain and or St. Pete's, and then we'll get into lease agreement and then talk about those specifics once we start building the lease. I think I want to focus on the two entities and where we want to go with it, and then build those substandards after we determine who that organization might be after your decision. Fair enough?
Yes, but if we get to the point in which some of these requirements that we propose to them are not acceptable by them and they back out, can we go to Rocky Mountain Development then?
I would ask the trustees to allow me to explore the next option. Yes.
Just to clarify, they proposed a 12 to 14 square foot payment, right, yearly? And whether they sublet or not, that doesn't change that, right?
No.
I mean, that doesn't change that proposal.
Right.
So it's more a matter of whether we're in favor of them have the ability to sublet, right?
Correct.
Trustee Armstrong, did you have another question?
Just some comments. First, I appreciate the discussion of the different viewpoints, because as a trustee that our neighbors sacrificed to provide the funds for the school district, and we are for the common good, it is very hard to not look at another organization like Head Start that is just in alignment with that and turn to kind of a for-profit model. And yet we do have a fiduciary responsibility, and we are in deficit. So I would really like to not be in this situation, but here we are. So I just want to put that on record, because it would be ideal to not be in that. But I guess the good thing is that both these proposals are about providing childcare and in some ways a head start for the next generation, which does align with our mission. So I'm glad we have these options to choose from.
And let me lastly state that I thank you as the trustees to allow me and my team, my staff, to explore this option. What I don't want to do is have buildings that are sitting and we're not doing something with them. So although these are hard conversations, they're ones that are not going to go away. As we have other facilities that are not being used, I'm going to bring it back to this group and we're going to continue to look, because what I'm not going to do is sit on multi-million-dollar deficit and have facilities vacant while we're looking at programs for kids. And so we're going to turn every rock over. And this is the one of those conversations that we have right now that's going to help us preserve what we have for kids. And that's something we said we didn't want to do, is eliminate programs and things for our students. And this is an option for us to lessen that impact. And I will bring it to this board again when the time is right and the facilities are there.
I'd just like to add a bit. The way that I'm seeing this, it's about $280,000 for St. Pete's and 165 for Head Start. So that's about 115 difference per year, which does add up. Plus a more clear investment into the building from St. Pete's. It sounds to me like St. Pete's has a much more flexibility and access to money, where Head Start is bound by the federal dollars from which they are funded. So that's significant. That said, my entire educational career has been in Title I schools. And if you don't know what Title I schools are, they're schools for low-income kids. So this one in particular pulls at my heartstrings. And knowing that that the kids that have a harder start, that come from underprivileged homes, have a harder time making their way through our system, and oftentimes become a major focus of our efforts and our trying to improve and educate children. So that in itself will influence my vote. Just knowing that I want to make sure that Head Start has supported us and we have supported them, and regardless of which way the board votes tonight, I think that we will continue to look for ways to work together. But at this point, we have to, as Trustee Armstrong said, I think make a really tough choice. The good news is that we got two particularly strong proposals, and that we have to choose between them, and that's hard. At least it is hard for me. So that's how I'm feeling as we move into vote. Any other comments? All right. Is there a motion?
You want to do the public comment?
What's that?
We can do.
My cheat sheet says public comment after the first motion. Is that not right?
It's the eternal question.
Okay. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Why don't we do it now before we get too far along? You don't think it's not illegal?
I think it's totally appropriate.
It's not a legal
no,
problem?
No, and it's
Yeah,
I
this is
just
gonna
chuckle
hand out.
because we go through this at every Great Falls City Commission meeting too, because.
Okay. Okay, we're just having a little discussion. My procedural cheat sheet says to do it after the motion, but
Somebody's
it might
hand
be
up.
best to go before. So,
Thank you.
We'll wait till comment.
okay. Let's go ahead and, since it's not a legal issue, let's go ahead and take public comment at this point. We will limit our public comments to 3 minutes. And I would ask anyone either online, we'll do it in person to start with. Is there anyone in person that would like to give a public comment on the proposal to lease the Ray Bjork Learning Center? If you could come up and please state your name and your relationship to the district, whether it be parent, employee, citizen, whatever it is that connects you to Helena Public Schools.
All right, my name is Peggy Hollow Phelps. I live at 403 Ming Place in Helena. Madam Chair, trustees, and all who are present and online, thank you so much for your service to our children, public schools, and community. And thank you for this opportunity to comment in support of RMDC Head Start as the next occupants of the Ray Bjork Learning Center. If I could amplify and underline some of the comments I've heard tonight, Trustee Satry, you're not here in person, I'm thanking you also. After 25 years in the special education preschool program, working side by side with Head Start, I know the value, I saw the value of the early years and high quality education on children at risk. I'm a strong advocate for our Helena Public Schools, and I maintain that Head Start is the perfect fit for Ray Bjork. At the August 1st Facilities Committee meeting, I heard our financial considerations. You saw it again tonight, that the top weighted item is financial considerations. What comes to my mind when I hear that is all the research-based evidence of the profits of early high-quality education on children, our most vulnerable preschool children, our Head Start children. We can look to studies out of University of Chicago, but we can look to Cascade County. Under the leadership of Sheriff Edwards, we saw in action impacts of high quality early care and education on our most vulnerable children at risk. And yes, both proposals involve childcare. We know the Head Start kids are coming from vulnerable, adverse, in poverty, welfare, you know the factors. So for me, what comes to mind is pay now or pay later. Fight crime, invest in kids, those kinds of slogans. So I hope that those kinds of financial considerations also impact your selection. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Phelps. Is there anyone else in person that would like to provide public comment? Online, do we still have Ms. Shaw? Jane Shaw, if you would like to provide public comment.
Hi. I know this is not a time for dialogue, but I do have a clarifying question. Under the St. Pete's proposal, there was discussion of St. Pete's employees are not the only people who have children in their Pete's Place daycares currently. I do assume that they get preference. My question would be, would school district employees under this lease agreement get any sort of second preference for putting their children into this established childcare?
And that's a great question. Ms. Shawn, I'll answer that. The answer is that wasn't part of the proposal and nor was it discussed. And so if that's something that the district would like to engage in, having that conversation, and then if we move forward, if the board proves St. Pete's to move forward, then that could be a conversation we have when we build that lease agreement. But those weren't part of the RFP proposals that we are asking for. So what I'm hearing you say is that that's something you're looking forward to hearing more about as we move forward.
Yes. Thank you for the clarification. I didn't see anything in the RFP either, but it just came to mind when it was discussed that it wasn't just St. Pete's employees that had children in their facility. So thank you for the answer.
Thank you, Ms. Shawn. Are there any other public comments online?
I don't see any.
Seeing none. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and
Chair Hawthorne, if I may.
Absolutely.
Janelle had just mentioned that these are considered elementary buildings. So just to let you know that I'll be refraining from voting on them.
Okay. All right, so we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Is there a motion? And I'm not exactly sure how we want to phrase this. This is a recommendation from the superintendent. So the motion, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, would be to either to accept or reject the recommendation by the superintendent for choosing St. Peter's Health as the leasee from the Helena Public Schools. Correct? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move we accept the superintendent's recommendation that the proposals from St. Peter's Health be accepted and that the administration be directed to move forward in starting negotiations over a lease agreement to be brought back to the trustees for approval.
Motion by Trustee Hindoin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Beaver. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Aye. Okay, we've got
5-1. 4-2. Did you guys 2?
4-2. Motion passes. What's that?
5.
Okay.
Did you vote in favor?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3,
It's 5-1.
5-1. Motion passes 5-1. Okay, next is the 7th Avenue Gym proposal.
Are you gonna test Gary on this one?
I think I did this one correctly.
Test him.
Okay. 7th Avenue Gym lease proposals. We had 2 of them. Queen City Football Club and the Helena Community Hub Working Committee. And their proposal is for the 1908. I'll get to that in a second. Very clever, the year it was built. Something's happening here. Okay. Okay, let's do this. Okay, proposal number 1, Queen City Football Club. Their proposed use of the gym is to use it as a gym. Youth sports facility, the main level being used primarily for indoor soccer, the mezzanine being used as intended as a track and spectator seating, and then the basement again used as designed classroom, a workout area, equipment storage, and then lockers and showers. Their right now their soccer program has 400 youth players and 100 adult players. Their season typically goes from October through March. They also work with other soccer clubs, including ours at both Capitol and Helena High, for pre-spring soccer practices. They hold summer camps, and as the bottom note indicates, they'll grant priority to our soccer teams in inclement weather or times when it's not safe to be outside, for instance, smoke. They also are intending to rent the space to other users, and some examples that were given were lacrosse. Helena Christian School has used their facility in the past, I think, as well. And they're also proposing other community sporting events or social events as well after hours. Their occupancy schedule is pretty it's pretty aggressive. I'm gonna tell you right now. They're proposing very quick negotiation of the lease. These dates were based on the initial board meeting that was planned for a week ago, so we would back these up a week or two based on the meeting being held today. So phase 1 improvements would start immediately after lease is signed, and I will talk about what those are here in a second. With the intent of opening for their season at the beginning of October. They're suggesting a fundraiser in October and then starting the season November through March and starting improvements in the spring of 2024. And again, I'll talk about the phase 1 and phase 2 improvements here in a minute. They are suggesting a 30-year lease as their preference. If we negotiate a lease that's shorter than that, they're suggesting that we fund a portion of the capital improvements that they are suggesting that all of them come from the deferred maintenance report. All the improvements that they're suggesting are from the deferred maintenance report and other studies that we've commissioned in the past. They're proposing a $1 a month paid yearly. And this is similar to what Grand Street pays to the city for use of that facility, although theirs is just $1 a year. They're going to bump theirs up to $12 a year, if I'm reading it right. They would like, ultimately, for the school district to donate that to them. And again, that's a discussion for probably another day. They are proposing that they will fund all capital improvements. Again, I'll talk about that. All major minor maintenance, preventive maintenance, deferred maintenance, operating costs, and property taxes on that facility. Improvements are broken down into two phases. Phase 1, which is this year, and then phase 2 from 2024 forward for 9 years up to 2033. And it's all of these areas that have been called out in the deferred maintenance plan. Number 1, demo or repair the smokestack. Mezzanine structural reinforcement. It's condemned right now, the mezzanine is. So that needs some structural reinforcement. Exterior brick repair, repointing the mortar joints. They're in pretty bad shape on that building in some areas. Updating timber braces and connectors on that for earthquake preparedness, ADA improvements, minor ADA improvements, and then of course some painting inside as well. Phase 2, a lot of other things, locker rooms, classrooms, office improvements, and then some additional gym improvements, and then some signage. So in the back of the proposal, there's a 10-year plan that breaks all of these out by year. So if you want to look in there, I didn't include it on here because it's pretty detailed. So any questions on the Queen City Football Club proposal?
Trustee Armstrong.
Is that in this packet? Can
Yes.
anyone point it out to me in this thick packet where I
Is it in
can
that packet?
find that
We did,
information?
In the green folder.
Okay, that's why I couldn't find it. Thank you.
So the very last page of that has a detailed spreadsheet of their proposed improvements by year with an estimated cost. So for reference, the deferred maintenance bill on 7th Avenue Gym is $1.7 million. Exterior cladding is about $500,000. ADA accessibility is about $300,000. And HVAC replacement is $280,000. Now that ADA accessibility, there's certain things that will trigger ADA compliance. I'm going to probably defer if there's comments on this, they can answer those. But if you don't change the use of a facility, the ADA requirements, I think, are less than if you're changing the use of the facility. So just because it's $300,000 in our deferred maintenance report doesn't mean that that necessarily has to happen with this proposal. So for reference, $1.7 million from our deferred maintenance plan.
So in other words, we're not really making money off this, but we're having the financial burden of maintaining the building taken care of.
Yes.
Correct.
So we spend about $20,000 a year on utilities on this building, and
wow,
and significantly less than that on maintenance. We really only do maintenance that has to happen.
Yeah.
So probably $5,000 to $10,000 in annual maintenance, depending on what's happening. If we need a new roof, that's going to cost a lot of money. If a boiler goes down,
right.
We're already down to 2 boilers, so two of the 3. If another one goes out, then
so the Queen City would take care of that if a boiler
Yes.
went out. Okay, then my other question would be, given its location, what are the thoughts about parking in that? Have we discussed that at all? Because
it was not discussed in the proposal.
I would simply state that people know Central 7th Ave Gym. They know the facility. They know the parking. They know what they're getting into. Parking's not great, but they had that opportunity to submit a proposal knowing what the parking looked like. So
okay.
It is what it is, parking wise.
Warm up for soccer. Walk from your parking spot.
Okay. And then just a point of information for me. I know Queen City. I've coached with Queen City, so I will abstain from voting on this.
Okay, moving along to our next proposal, Helena Community Hub Working Committee. Their proposal is for the 1908 Community Hub. Their proposed use is for a downtown community hub, main level being used again as a gym. The mezzanine to be determined during phase 3 improvements, and I'll get into that later. The basement, the proposals right now are for early childhood center, a community use space to be determined by the community at a later date, and also other uses determined by a stakeholder group in the future. Their occupancy schedule, again, is broken down into multiple phases. Between now and 24 months from now, so 0 to 24 months is phase 1. And during that time, they will operate under an interim committee, a 501c3, according to an MOU that they enter into the school district with. They will update the PAR, which is the preliminary architectural report. We had one commissioned 3 or 4 years ago. They're proposing that they update that to see if there's any additional requirements to update the building. Fundraising for both operating and personnel costs, and then also during that time determining the timeline for how they'll open the gym for access to the community. They'll conduct outreach to the community and stakeholder engagement, and then elect a board of directors and the formation of the formal 501c3, then negotiating the final terms of a long-term lease with the Helena Public Schools. So that's for the first 24 months. Phase 2 will be from 24 to 60 months. That's when they'll transition to operate underneath a board of directors as a new nonprofit. They hope to leverage grant funding for the construction that they're proposing in phase 2. That's when they will also identify and establish partnerships for an early childhood center, and then further develop the community spaces based on input. Phase 3 is from 60 months and beyond. That's when they'll complete the remaining proposed construction and any modifications to the facility, and ID any additional uses for the facility based on that stakeholder input. And then explore the development of that mezzanine space. As I said, it's condemned. It's not structurally sound right now. Okay. The lease that they're proposing initially, they want to operate under a memorandum of understanding with the school district, where they'll conduct their due diligence and then establish their board of directors. The MOU timeline for the first 6 months, they want to review the progress. They'll develop their grants. At 12 months, they want to update on phase 2 progress and introduce the board. And then at 18 to 24 months, they'll develop and negotiate that lease. There is no lease proposal at this time. That is to be determined after that first 24-month period, where they, as mentioned here, establish their board of directors and conduct their due diligence. There's no proposed payment at this time. The MOU will establish any payments in the future to include building and utility costs. And the long-term lease, they're hoping to include proposals for future construction and additional development of the space. So I took this language directly out of their proposal. All improvements are contingent on completion of updated PAR, negotiation with Helena Public Schools, as well as adequate funding. So again, we have a PAR that we conducted. They're proposing an update. They are going to pay for an updated PAR. If there's anything determined in that architectural report, then they'll make their determination on what improvements they're going to make at that time. And it's things such as hazardous materials. We've done the reports on hazardous materials as well. ADA code compliance if required. If there's any electrical upgrades, HVAC and plumbing, which there are, their exterior windows, trim and masonry all need to be fixed or improved. The Early Childhood Center will have additional requirements based on DPHHS requirements, and they'll determine what those improvements are at that time. And then the community use wing, depending on what the community use is, again, there'll be a determination on what improvements are needed for that. So all of that to be determined in the next 24 months, approximately. Any questions about this? Any comments about this? Okay, moving along. Oh, let me back up. We've already published this publicly, so it's not a big secret. Anyways, I'll turn it back over to the superintendent for his recommendation.
As I made the recommendation in our facilities committee meeting, we recommended proposal number on Queen City Football Club, that we move forward. We approve that proposal and we move forward with talks in lease construction.
Any further questions by the board or comments? Okay, do I have a motion to accept the recommendation to accept the 7th Avenue gym by, oh, I'm drawing a blank,
Madam Chair,
Queen City Football Club?
I move we accept the recommendation of the superintendent that the proposal from Queen City Football Club be approved and selected, and direct the administration to move forward with negotiating the terms of lease consistent with the proposal.
Motion by Trustee Hindoin. Is there a second?
I second.
Drawing a blank. Second by Trustee Cletus. Thank you. Okay, is there any public comment before we move on to vote? If you could just state your name and your connection to the district, whatever that is, and I will start you on a 3-minute and give you a 1-minute warning if you get that far.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you. My name is Bridget Johnston. I am the president of Queen City Football Club. My relationship to the district would be that I had 3 children go through the system. They're all now young adults. I basically just wanted to say that we are very excited about the possibility to move into the gym. We do currently have a facility out in the valley off of Mill Road. We've been in for 5 years, and our lease expires at the end of next month. So for us, this timing is perfect. We're really excited about the possibility of moving into the city and bringing something that is currently not offered in downtown Helena. I did want to at least kind of address a couple of the questions that came from tonight and from the meeting a couple of weeks ago. One is that we are a current locally operated nonprofit charity organization. We service youth from all over the town and county. We also have a long-standing relationship already with the Helena School District. We have been using Sierra Park for decades. We used to be Vigilante Soccer. So if anybody's heard of that, we have put a lot of time, effort, and even funds into Sierra Park over the years. As far as parking, I'd like to address that also. We did look at the parking. Most of our activity is after school hours and in the evenings and on the weekends, when parking is a lot less congested in that area. And there is also that parking lot across the street, which is more parking than we currently have. So it's actually a good thing for us. I really think that's all I wanted to share at this time, other than I did want to point out that we are not going to be using the showers because we don't want to go down that avenue with our people. We're going to basically use the locker rooms downstairs as really just locker rooms like home and aways where they can put their shoes on and store their stuff and then come up to the gym for their games. And if anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Johnston. Any further public comment? Is there any online, Candace or Gary? Okay. All right. We have a motion by Trustee Hindoin, a second by Trustee Cletus. It's time to vote. All those in favor, please signify. Oh, was there more public comment? More comments. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Beaver.
We have recognized that there is a great need for additional parking in the First Central School. We are presently paying the city for our staff to park along where are we? Lawrence and on Cruz, and we could very much use additional parking. After looking at these proposals, I don't see that we're going to gain much, and we really need parking. So if we were to demolish that building and there would be no deferred maintenance left, it would be gone. And we would acquire parking space that we definitely need there. There'd be no more utilities to pay, so we would gain in that fashion. So I think we ought to consider that there be a third alternative here, that we retain that space, demolish the building, and create parking space for Central School employees.
So just to clarify, if there was a third option, we would have to not vote or vote against the recommendation and then move on to the next phase. Would that be correct? Yep.
We reject them.
We would reject the proposal if that's the way you wanted to go as a trustee.
We'd vote down the current motion if that was
Correct.
the board's inclination, and then we'd have to come up with what was next.
Go from there. Trustee Armstrong.
Just have a question. Does that cost us money to negotiate the parking? I guess I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, there's been a longstanding payment to the city for parking ever since Central's, new Central's been there. Since I've been here, we've paid the city for parking, additional parking there.
How much? Do we know how much?
I don't have that on the top of my head. I can get it.
I would think that would be, I guess, helpful in factoring.
Do you have that, Janelle? I don't have it either.
Do we know the cost?
That's what she just asked. I don't have that on top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if Janelle had that or not.
Way back there.
Okay.
There's some questions we're just gonna have to
Right.
get to you, back to
Okay.
you.
Sounds good. Any further board comments or questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to say the community hub proposal's really cool. I mean, it's one of those things that if you can envision what sits there at the end of that process, something like that's a really neat addition to a community. And they've happened before. I mean, they've happened in other places. In Paris Gibson Junior High in Great Falls, the old one's an art museum. I mean, others, we did I think Libby School District donated a building that became part of a community center at some point. But, I just think comparatively speaking, where it sits relative to the proposal we got from Queen City, and recognizing that there's a lot of things that would have to come together over time in the alignment of all the stars and efforts to pull something together like the 1908. I just think that's kind of where I'm landing in the present, and on the having a tenant in there, the facility being used for needs that the community has, and and making sure consistent with actually Ms. Shaw's comment. This is another, hope you guys are making a little list of lease terms the trustees have come up with. And Candace can go back and get them. But again, in this case, the proposal actually notes that it's going to contemplate a proposed, preferred use right for Helena Public Schools activities in the event the space is needed.
Correct.
And consistent with Ms. Shaw's comment, on that one, I think be talking a potential discussion in that lease about, slots reserved or preference right for childcare space.
Agreed.
So, there's those are all things that'll come together in the lease agreements that are negotiated and brought back to us. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
And I might add further.
Sure.
And I don't disagree with Trustee Beaver that parking's been a conversation there for many years. I'll go back to, if it's not sentimental, it's just a good place. I hate to lose a structure that would be good for our community, but understanding that there's a need for parking, and so what outweighs the other. So if I will indulge you in understanding that the cathedral has allowed us additional parking off to the north Currently, that's offline because they're reconditioning, the cathedral and all of that equipment's being stored in there. But we have worked out, Miss Ridgway has worked out additional parking for Central down the street. So that has alleviated some of it. But if you do knock down that building, there's going to be at a cost, and it's not necessarily sentimental. It's what do you do with all of the 1900s asbestos and that? And so the offside of that, the cost of commissioning that into rubble and calling it away is going to be at a cost, one to the community and two to our budget. So we do need parking. I just don't know, Trustee Beaver and trustees, if it's at the cost of taking a building down. So those are considerations for you.
Trustee Satry, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No questions.
I would just like to echo Trustee Hindoin's. The community hub is has some real potential. I think my reservations with that one is the proposal was pretty vague. I didn't get a feeling that they knew exactly what the path was going to be going forward, and yet, they did share some history of some the people that made the proposal of having success in other areas. But the football gym, one of the nice things about that historically is you're bringing it back to its original use, which is pretty nice, and they seem to have a much more clear path forward as to what they're going to do. Any further board comments? All right. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1.
4 to 1.
4 to 1. Okay. All right.
Trustee Armstrong abstained.
Moving on to Ms. Michelson is going to be educating us on all the work she's been doing lately on the fiscal work, the financial summaries for both the elementary and high school, and then the adoption of the elementary and high school fiscal year, which we will be handling separately, each item.
You sure you don't want to break before all this?
Trustees?
I second that.
Can you second that motion? Okay, it's 7:22. Sorry, we'll delay.
Okay.
8 minutes. Let's start at 7:30.
Sorry, threw you off your cheat sheet.
That's all right.
It's
I said, but we're not too far off.
But it was
So,
tacos.
so yeah, Mr. Worthy got us too distracted by the food.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's go ahead and turn our attention to Janelle for the financial elementary fiscal year summary. Start with. Is that where you want to start? That's the order. that is
I
listed.
actually combined the two
Okay.
trustees' financial summary because I'm not going to go through every page of that report. I'll just go through the highlights.
I'm going to kick us off. I'm going to tee us up a little bit.
Talk about
Well,
this?
just a simple fact. You want me to talk about it? Yeah, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm talking about you. The immensity of this packet wasn't RFPs, right? This meeting for 11 months has been in preparation for the adoption of a budget. This doesn't come on slight hands. The amount of effort it takes to pull the budget, one, close out a school year financially, and then build it back up, is evident to the work that Janelle and her team has done and will do. She has visited with other AAs as of late as today. They don't have theirs done. They're scrambling. And Janelle's like, check, got mine done. And so I appreciate her ability and what she does and her knowledge of what's laid out in front of you. And as I just heard, a lot of times we can just stamp it because we know it's done right. But I think it's important for you to hear it. One other piece is I want to thank my team because we started our budget conversations and budget meetings around a $6 million deficit. It's probably experienced throughout all of the AAs in Montana. What you're going to hear tonight is that we've whittled that to 3 million without losing services. We condensed. It looks a little different, but we still have the same programs. What you're going to find out is that now we're down to 2. And so that's significant when we're talking about where we started and where we're at moving in with a building reserve fund that's still there. So thank you for your work, Janelle.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to try to do this with the same level of energy as Robert.
Good luck.
We'll give it a shot. So the school districts have to account for the receipts and disbursements of all money belonging to the district in accordance with the methods prescribed by the Office of Public Instruction, which is the big trustees financial summary that you have before you, which is not to be confused with the audited financial summary or audited financials that you will receive in the spring. They're 2 separate reports. Actually, this report is supposed to be submitted to the county superintendent by August 15th, which is today. So we're making the deadline, and then to the OPI by the 15th of September. We can make subsequent amendments to the trustees financial summary. For instance, which has happened before. We didn't get maybe the reports on the pensions from the MPERA, PERS and TRS. So we had to make changes then. Those I'm allowed to just make without your approval and resubmit. Sorry. So the highlights. The district spent down all but about $385,000 of the COVID money that we've received. And in fiscal year 22-23, the money was used for special education services and interventions for student learning loss. And I did attach a document that breaks down all the expenditures with the COVID dollars. It should be in your packet. And that included all 4 sources. But in addition to that, we also received some other COVID-related smaller grants. We received ARP Homeless Children and Youth, a little over $12,000. ARP Emergency Connectivity Program Fund, $410,334. ARP IDEA Part B, about $443,000, and ARP IDEA Special Ed special education preschool, about 12,000, and our DPHHS safe reopening schools, a little over 207,000. Then, if you remember back in fiscal year 21-22, the district negotiated a retirement incentive with the Helena Education Association. The agreement provided for $15,000 retirement incentive, $15,000 retirement incentive to teachers meeting certain criteria. And in fiscal year 2023, 16 teachers took advantage of that, and the cost was approximately $288,000. In addition to that, in 21-22, the the Helena Education Association negotiated a 2.5% salary increase for 2023, and the cost of that increase was approximately $970,000. And in fiscal year 2023, health benefits were increased 15% at a cost of $1,500,000. The food service program returned to pay status in fiscal year 2023, and meal sales increased by $1 million. So I know Robert thought that we didn't capture as many as we should, and we didn't, but we are getting students eating again, paying, and we just need to get our free and reduced numbers up again. However, the federal food service reimbursement rate returned to pre-COVID status and was down approximately 52%, so they're not paying at that higher rate any longer. Total revenues were down about $1.6 million. And total expenditures were also down, primarily due to reduction in cost to Sodexo. Interest revenue rebounded with about a $1.3 million increase over the previous year in all funds, which remind me to, when we get to the budget side of things, remind me to talk to you about how this affects the budget, interest revenue. State and county transportation reimbursements in the high school were both down approximately $54,000 or 54, yeah. And that's a direct result of the reduction in bus routes to East Helena schools. Facility rental income increased approximately 70% in the high school and 20% in the elementary, so people are in our buildings again. Despite shifting technology costs of about $600,000 to the interlocal fund, the elementary technology fund continues to struggle with another drop in cash balance of approximately $32,000. The cash balance at the end of the year was $92,953 compared to about $900,000 5 years ago. So we used to have carryover of $800,000 to $1 million in technology to be used for the budget in the next year. And now even paying $600,000 out of the interlocal fund, we still have a puny amount of money to carry over for the budget. That's my pitch for a new technology levy. I'm not done with it either. The district received $142,136 in advanced opportunity grant. This grant money is accounted for in the flexibility fund and is used to reduce student and family out-of-pocket costs for AP exams, dual credit classes, and other course fees, and for an enhancement of career and technical education programs. And I believe this year it's over $200,000. We'll get to that on the budget side. The cash balance in the building fund is $444,000, and this is a reflection that all bond projects are substantially completed at this point. Major projects funded by the Building Reserve Fund included the C.R. Anderson re-roof, the completion of the C.R. Anderson lighting, Capitol High School tennis courts, Helena High School shop re-roof, Capitol High School shop re-roof, as well as several smaller projects. The tuition for school-age child care program remained constant from the previous year. However, with the loss of ESSER grants, total revenues were down about $100,000, and expenditures were just held steady. At year end, after all cash transfers, the interlocal fund had an ending fund balance of $6,962,233, of which $736,182 is earmarked for the building funds. So that is good news. That was my hope, that we would end the year with about $6 million in the interlocal fund. So those are the highlights. I don't know if you have any questions. Pretty exciting stuff.
I of course have a question. I was just wondering, the COVID relief money, what are the plans for the remainder of that? We still have some left, you said.
Of the COVID relief?
Uh-huh.
Oh, the 300 and whatever?
Uh-huh.
I'm leaving this up to our superintendent to decide, and he changes his mind almost daily. Like, I think I should use it for this, and so we'll land on something and bring it to your attention.
I have no doubt we will spend it appropriately for something.
September 2024.
So.
Yep, September 2024.
September 2024, it needs to be expended.
Oh, so 22. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought it was sometime this year. It is not.
That was the
Plenty of time for
that was the
mine
ESSER 2.
Okay, that's what I was getting.
Yep, ESSER 2 is gone.
Okay.
Is spent. But he has a year to decide what to do with the other.
Okay, that answers my question, because I thought it was under the same rules as ESSER 2.
2024.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Any other questions for Janelle? I have just, or maybe you could just clarify. I know that we've been, or it's not a surprise that the technology fund is draining. We've been talking about it for a long time, but it looks like, we're slowly draining it, but now it's draining more quickly. Is the cost just rising?
Well, technology needs have increased so much that, a levy of 500,000 worked 10 years ago, but with the cost of technology now, we're spending it primarily on just salaries, just for our tech staff.
And safety and security, I'm guessing, is beefing that up too?
Well, yeah, we've had discussions on, is this safety and security or is this technology? And we need a clear-cut line, which we hope we're going to develop as we try to define the technology levy and the safety and security levy.
I think maybe just the bullet part of that is, licensing software equipment is going up, salaries are going up. Our need of the amount of technology has increased throughout the district, and so there's a higher need for it. It costs more to put in, and it costs more to maintain it, and it costs more because our salaries are there as well. So it's a lot of variables, and nothing's getting cheaper. And so 10 years ago when we passed it, it fit. It's probably longer than 10. That's before an iPhone came out, and now it's it's hard pressed to find something in our district that doesn't have a technology base to it. As food and how we check out, and the QR codes, and how kids are ordering it, everything we have is centered around technology, and so our need has increased quite a bit.
20-year-old levy. That's your answer.
Gary's got great stories associated with how technology was back then. On the positive side, we started this summer thinking we were 3 in the hole. Now we're closer to 2. How do we get this happy news?
We'll get there.
We'll get there when we get to the budget.
Okay. But that is good.
Because it has a lot of assumptions in there.
All right.
So.
Qualified good news. Any other questions for Janelle? All right, thank you.
You need to,
So we will need to go ahead and vote on these, correct?
2 of them.
2 of them.
Yep, elementary
Separately.
and high school, yep.
Okay, seeing no further questions, do I have a motion to certify the trustees' financial summary for elementary fiscal year 2022-23?
Madam Chairman, I would move that we certify the financial summary from 22-23 fiscal year.
Motion by trustee Satry. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by trustee Armstrong. Any public comment before we vote? Any further board questions? Okay. And this will not include you, trustee Walsh, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 0. Motion passes 6 to 0. Moving right along, do I have a motion for the to certify the trustees' financial summary for the high school fiscal year 2022 and 23?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Beaver. Second?
Second.
Second by trustee Hindoin. Any public comment before we vote? Nope. Seeing none, any further board comments? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7 to 0. All right, up next, final budget adoption, elementary, and you're going to lump those together?
I will.
Elementary and high school for 2023 and 24.
Do we want to mention that what if we don't pass, how that rotates down each day? Do we want
it's highly recommended that you pass your budget, because if you don't like it and don't pass it tonight, we will meet every day until you do, until the 20th. And by the way, I'm going to be gone.
Working every day is why you pay us the big bucks.
Okay, so we'll dive into the budget. I would like to first address your question about the 2 million. We thought we were at 3. We would be at 3, except that I'm not concerned about not having the superintendent contingency and the assistant superintendent contingency in the general fund, as long as our interlocal is healthy. And right now it is. So pulling those 2 contingencies out dropped us to a 2 million deficit with all the assumptions I've made. So at the time this was prepared, and as of today, we have not settled negotiations with employee groups, most of them, maybe 6 employees total. So the assumptions I've made were a 0.5% increase for teachers, secretaries, paraeducators, and independents, a 2% increase and a $500 retention bonus for carpenters and craft positions, a 0.5% increase and 20 cents on steps above 4 for custodians, no increases for administrators, and mid-year lane changes for educators at $294,580 in the elementary and $76,000 in the high school, which makes me a little uneasy because those are lower than we have been seeing, but based on the information submitted by the teachers, that's what we would see. It also assumes no increases in health benefits. So with those assumptions, you can see the salary and health benefits, all funds actual for 2023 and budgeted for 2024. There's a decrease in administrative salaries, and that reflects the reduction of 1 assistant superintendent and the replacement of 2 principals being hired at a lower salary. The decrease in educator salaries is primarily a result of the work that was done by the superintendent's office, replacements being hired at a lower salary, and a reduction in FTE as a result of non-renewals in combination classes and program remodeling. The increases in salaries for other employee groups reflects the assumed increases listed above and no reduction in FTE. Other assumptions, for natural gas, we assumed a 14.8% increase, which is considerably lower than what we thought it was going to be in the spring. We thought it was going to be like 49%, but they came back with a much more reasonable increase, and it's still below what I'm seeing nationally, what is being paid. So that was good. A 4% increase in electricity. And I better explain this one because Northwestern Energy is trying to secure a 17% increase. However, they were allowed a 14% temporary increase last year. So we had been paying that anyway. So I only increased the budget 4% in the ensuing year. Makes sense? You all look confused.
You know, the gas from, if it's not Northwestern.
Commercial energy, sorry. Commercial energy at a Cup Bank. And then O&M was just increased based on historical trends at 4.5%, and that's probably something Todd would argue with me. But property and liability insurance actually increased 9.5%, and in the past few years, it's been double digits because of cybersecurity. But with Payne West got us into a new program, and so our cyber insurance is not expensive as it was, and we're not seeing those increases. The increase was actually due to revaluation of the property in property values. So I think this next one is really something to me. Taxable values increased by approximately 49% in the elementary and approximately 8% in the high school. Big discrepancies. So higher increases in the urban areas and not so high in the rural. I did question it. I reached out to my contact at Department of Revenue, and she's got a very short answer that said, reappraisals and market valuation.
It's the price movement in residential property,
Yep.
not farmland.
And they had a rubric, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I checked, my property. I don't live in town, and it seemed to be true. So, but as a result of that, and I think this is an important thing that we need to communicate, because taxable values did go up, there was an overall decrease in levies. By approximately they decreased 16.20%. So that should theoretically equate to fewer taxes for taxpayers as a result of the school district levies. There's a misconception out there that school districts levy the same way as other local governments. Other local governments have what we call floating mills. So they can levy 10 mills every year. Ours is based on dollars, and then we calculate the mills. So, for instance, the city levied 10 mills last year. Taxable values were 100. Mill value was 100, got $1,000. If mill values went up to 200 this year, they get to levy 2,000. Doesn't work that way for school districts. So when they ask you out there, you could explain to them that we are capped on dollars and the mills mean very little to us.
So if people do ask us that, could we safely say that there'll be very little change in their school taxes as a result of the increase in property values?
I would be careful because it's so individual, depending on what happened to your particular property. But out on the Department of Revenue's website, they have a calculator. where you can put in your market value and your school district and it'll calculate. I'll send you the link.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, on to the general fund. I said I was going to do this with enthusiasm.
Big food.
Elementary A and B increased 40 in the elementary, and okay, where am I at? Yeah, 40 in the elementary and decreased by 68 in the high school, which we anticipated because this is the last year we dealt with the East Helena issue, and I do believe it will be up next year, according to initial results, according to Superintendent Welts. My understanding that the primary reason for the decline in the elementary was smaller kindergarten than usual, because I think we had high hopes of higher A and B. We used 3-year average A and B in the high school and the current A and B in the elementary. Inflationary increases were 2.7%, and the special education block grants increased also. I'm not going to read through all that, but you can read through it. And so if you look at the state funding, there was actually a decrease in state funding for the high school and a little bit of a blip for the elementary. And the decrease is a direct relation to the loss of A and B.
Madam Chair, could I ask you, so did we lose elementary A and B or gain 40?
We gained 40, but we had anticipated more.
Okay, so
the loss.
So
yeah, I guess that is a little confusing in there.
That was, but the reason we didn't have as much as we thought we would have is because of
the smaller
kindergarten incoming class.
Right.
Okay.
We moved approximately $5,092,602 of expenditures out of the elementary general fund. Some of these, I mean, I say we moved them because in the past we had paid them, but for years now we've been paying the sped paras and interpreters one-on-one services out of the tuition fund. So, you know, maybe I should stop saying that. But we did move counselor salaries of $525,180 to the building reserve for that safety and security. And I should say to you that we could move at least that much more if we pass the safety and security levy out of the general, relieve some of the general fund with nurses and counselors' salaries. Curriculum, we transferred $405,705 out of the general fund. This is all elementary into the interlocal. Property and liability insurance, $697,995 moved out of the general fund into interlocal. The CST match of $473,000 we transferred to the interlocal. That may be high because of our CSCT situation. Just want to point that out. More technology expenditures, $656,34 transferred to the interlocal. And we bumped up the salaries that we pay out of the general fund that could be paid out of the CSCT match. We bumped that up a little bit, and now we're at $471,489. So all of those. Oh, and then the utilities for Ray Bjork and 7th Avenue Gym, and you could probably figure out why I did that. So all those expenditures that we used to pay out of the general fund are now being paid out of the interlocal and the building reserve and the tuition and CSCT. In addition to the above expenditure transfers, the superintendent's contingency was eliminated and termination pay was reduced by $260,000. I did that because we offered that retirement incentive for 2 years. So I'm not anticipating as many retirements in 2024, but we're going to have to bump that back up eventually. Department budgets were reduced 20% and building budgets were reduced 10%. The high school looked a little better. Approximately $932 and $80 of expenditures were transferred out of the general fund. Counselor salaries of $208,354 were transferred to the building reserve. Sped paras, we saw a reduction in one-on-one services for sped paras in the high school in 2023, and we have to budget the actual expenditures from 2023 and 2024. So this is a pretty big reduction from the prior year. And you'll notice that when you look at the overall budget changes. Last year we had a budget of $705,000 and this year it's only $494,000. So it's a pretty big reduction. And that's just the inability. Well, actually, I think I talk about this later, so never mind. Technology expenditures of $283,543 transferred to the interlocal. And the same elimination of the contingency, superintendent contingency, and the reduction in termination pay and department and school building budget reductions. So here's where I want to talk about the interest revenue. So operating reserves increased. Now, if I spent down, so here's how I do it. If I spend down my budget as close as I can and transfer what I can to the interlocal. Anything remaining, I have two choices. I can reappropriate it, which means I return it to the taxpayers, or I can put it into operating reserves. So your question is, if you spent down your budget, why do we have this excess? The law requires that you budget interest revenue at whatever you received in the prior year. So in 2022, our interest revenue was this big. 2023 came and we got $1 million overall. And so you have to do something with that. And in my opinion, the very best thing to do was to put it into operating reserves. So they did increase this year. Transportation. The increase in the elementary budget reflects the assumed increases in salaries, the transportation contract increase of 5%, and estimated cost for improvements to bus drop-off locations. I know that Todd and Drew now have plans to what do you call it? Resurface some of these areas. Yeah. And the decrease in the high school is, just a direct result of fewer bus routes to and from East Helena. The tuition here, I got ahead of myself on the other one. The tuition fund budget reflects the actual costs associated with providing one-to-one services to special needs students in fiscal year 2023. So there were different delivery models that we did, particularly in the high school, because of the difficulty of hiring and retaining special education employees. So the one-to-one decreased. And as a result, our budget this year will decrease because our actual expenditures were less. In also other expenditures included in the tuition fund budget include charges from county and regional detention facility centers for resident students detained in those facilities, and the district's match for students receiving instructional services at state residential treatment facilities, and the district's share of tuition costs for resident students in group homes or foster homes receiving services in other districts. The slight increase in the retirement fund just represents budgeted contingencies for possible pay increases because, we haven't settled any negotiations yet. Um, the adult ed, we've changed those programs quite a bit over the last few years. Josh has made some changes. And so I just believe that the budgets this year more realistic representation of the district's needs, slight reduction. And here we go with the technology. Here's my soapbox. Both the elementary and high school have a perpetual technology levy. $520,500 for the elementary and $559,500 for the high school. Now, technology needs and usage has increased over the years. The technology needs, particularly in the elementary, have outpaced resources, which has depleted the elementary technology fund. The remaining fund balance for the budget was only $92,953. And like I said, over the 6-7 years ago, it was anywhere from $800,000 to $1 million. Over the last 2 years, the interlocal fund has been supplementing both the general fund and the elementary technology fund. So if you think about it, the interlocal has been paying close to $1.2 million because it's supplementing both the general and the technology. The bulk of the budget, about 75%, goes towards salary and benefits, leaving very little for actual technology-related purchases. And the high school does a little bit better, but it still isn't enough to cover the actual needs. And so here's my plug. The district is in desperate need of adequate technology levies, which I think we're planning on running, right? Okay. And then in addition to our levies, the state kicks in a whopping $31,000 in the elementary and a whopping $17,000 in the high school in technology aid. Moving on to the flexibility fund. The amount of the elementary budget is just carryover that we haven't spent yet. The high school is the Advanced Opportunity Award that we received for CTE and AP classes and dual credits and etc. And it is $215,423 this year. And I know Josh has plans for that money. The budget amount for debt service payments on the 2017 bonds are $2,310,000 for principal payments and close to 1.8 for interest payments. And the budgeted amount for debt service payments on the 2019 bond issue, $325,000 for principal and roughly $247,000 for interest payments. Agent fees were estimated at $1,000, and we pay approximately $290,000 for SIDs in the elementary and roughly $200,000 for SIDs in the high school. Special Improvement District, sorry. And then the building reserve. And so in May, taxpayers generously approved an increase in the building reserve for 10 years. The increase in the elementary was $1,750,000 annually for a total of $3 million per year, and the increase in the high school was $750,000 annually for a total of $1.5 million per year. The remaining fund balance in the elementary was approximately $1.2 million and $1.6 in the high school. Planned projects for fiscal year 23-24 to be funded by the voted levy include flooring projects for Helena Middle School and Capitol High School, roofing projects at Smith Elementary and Helena High School, construction of Timberworks Park near Bryant Elementary, parking lot projects at various schools, HVAC projects at 1 or 2 schools to be determined, and painting projects. And other planned purchases include floor maintenance supplies, fire system inspections, elevator inspections and repair, and environmental testing, and safety and security system upgrades. Last year, we entered into a contract with SMA Architect and Design to prepare a facilities comprehensive master plan for the district. The target date for completion for the plan is it's still September 2023. Okay. And this master plan will likely steer the future the future of the facility projects, what we will do in the future. In addition to the voted levies, the district took advantage of the permissive levy to address safety and security needs in the district. Approximately $305,000 in the elementary and $152,000 in the high school. And we will also receive $305,000 in the elementary and $153,000 in the high school for school major maintenance aid from the state. The total building reserve budget is $4,809,507 in the elementary and $3,452,374 in the high school, which I think is a pretty healthy budget. Are y'all glazed over?
Questions? Trustee Beaver.
Well, I believe that somewhere near 93% of our revenue is expended in personnel. I don't know if that figure is correct any longer, but somewhere around there, I would assume.
I would clarify that that's in the general fund.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. And we're sitting on a $2 to $3 million deficit in the general fund.
Yes.
How do we rationalize any salary increases when we're $2 to $3 million in the hole?
I'm not going to throw Carrie under the bus, but kinda. The 0.5% was an offer made to the teachers. And in my experience here, if the teachers get 0.5, the other groups will get 0.5. And the other two increases, one of them has already been negotiated with the crafts. And I believe the carpenters are coming up tonight. And so since we made these offers, sort of felt like I should incorporate them in the budget.
Well, I guess my question is then, why were the offers made?
That's where I throw Carrie under the bus.
Sure.
I can't answer that. I don't know if Carrie wants to.
I can't rationalize it in my own mind that if we're $2 to $3 million in the hole in the general fund, why would there be any increase in salary? I cannot understand. I mean, if I was trying to run a business and if we were $200,000 to $300,000 in the hole, then nobody's going to get a raise. So please rationalize it to me, someone.
I'll take a stab at it. We're first of all, we're in the people business, and I think we invest in people, right? 73% of our general fund is within the salaries for all employee groups. We are also in a time where it's very difficult to find individuals that want to work, and I don't want to fall behind in a sense that we've done with other payroll groups, and where it takes a lot of energy and resources to get caught back up. Morale is part of what we do. And so I think that we need to find opportunities to acknowledge the work that people are doing in this district and yet not capitalize on our deficit that's going to sink us. And so there will be, I have not once got from this board that says that we are freezing all salaries across the district. We have talked about small increases that will signify that people are valued, right? People are valued, and that we need to keep up with as much as we can, understanding that there are going to be some services or the number of people that we employ will be less. And so I think at that point, are we going to go zeros, or are we going to try to keep up and yet pay for those increases with less people? So we're going to pay more to people that are less employees in our district. That's where we're at right now. And that's been where we've landed over the last 3 months.
Well, then can we assure parents and students that their offerings will be there next year? I mean, will elementary music and physical education still be there next year as they are this year?
Well, that's what we're working towards. Can I assure anything at this point? No, but that's what we are working towards.
Just to clarify, you're saying this year is starting in August, and then you're talking about the following year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I still have trouble with it. I do. I understand what you're saying. And it doesn't make sense to me that we would do such a thing.
Quite frankly, it's an impossible situation. If we are either one not adding salary increases to those that are working and not keeping up and being competitive, or we are doing slight changes that people are asking for and play groups are asking for far more. We're navigating these waters down the middle, trying to appease both sides. So if there's clarity that I need to know, I'll take that now.
Personally, my clarity would be that we stick with this, which is what is best for kids. So, yeah, it is kind of impossible because we don't have negotiations done, so we kind of don't know. We kind of don't know exactly what the impact, even though our costs aren't changing in terms of the increase in taxable value. It could still end up costing the average homeowner more for what goes to other parts of the government. We don't understand that yet, so I don't know the feasibility of this, of how much we could reasonably ask for safety and technology. So those are all up in the air, and yet at the same time we all are watching the gas costs go up and food costs go up, and I mean we're all in this boat. But at the same time, this has got to come first. That's why we exist. How do you balance that? Don't have an answer for you. Other than long term, this district, all stakeholders in this district and across the state have got to come together, because we shouldn't be fighting over the scraps, because it's in everyone's best interest to have the next generation be well educated so that they can have good paying jobs, so that the tax base can stay up and we can all have retirement and they can have health care. I mean, public education is the way we got to be as powerful as we are, and we've got to get the state focused on the benefits that come from public, not shortchanging it. But to me, that's we have to deal with reality now.
And we'll get through these budgets, and there's assumptions that Janelle's making that I think are realistic assumptions. There's not one person on this team that I've worked with in the last 2 years that doesn't have that plaque at their center of their core as what's best for kids. And sometimes that means that we take care of the adults that take care of the kids as well. And so everything we do, we went from $6 million down to roughly $2 million if things hold together. And we're going to fight another $2 million, not through cuts, but also revenue sources. And I think those are the pieces that we can't think about how we're going to cut ourselves out of this thing, but we also need to look at every 10 years, legislation looks at funding for school, the funding mechanism. And I think we need to start planning. We have started planning on what that attack looks like. We're looking at our levies. We're combining classes. And so we went from 6 to 4, or 6 to 2 with 4. I'm going to find another 2. And it's not because we're going to cut and then freeze everybody. We're also have to figure out other aspects of how we're going to get to that. We also bought ourselves a year on this 2-year cycle. Remember that the interlocal fund is going to give us an opportunity to get the budget committee around recommendations that I hope is less impacted kids and more about what we can do around our facilities and or levies. So I don't have a crystal ball, and nor do I have a clear roadmap, but I tell you, we are at the core what's best for kids. And that means that we are working diligently trying to find the right response to negotiations.
One of my concerns as we move forward with is, I don't know if it's just institutional habit, but we have some employee groups that are well below market value, and we have some that are in much better shape. And yet, if one group gets a 0.5%, then everyone gets a 0.5%. And the way the math works in my head, we're never going to catch some of those groups up, and we're going to have this discrepancy. And I feel like every employee in our school district is important. I mean, it'd be hard to argue that every position is not valued. And we have, this would be the superintendent was placed at a middle of the road market value, hasn't taken a raise for 2 years. We have administration who, historically went for decades, I believe, without a raise. And I don't think that any other employee group would be very happy about that. And I'm not blaming or pushing or trying to pull that back out, but I think that was a very integral part in what led to the administration pay problems that we had. And I think that as a board, we really have to look at why is our para group, and right now might not be the time, why is our para group, I've been told, well below market value, and yet they're looking at the same level of increase that other employee groups are, which will continue to keep them below market value. I'm not sure how we address that, but like you said, we're people. We're a people organization, and that means that all of our people are important. And so at some point, we're going to have to quit freezing salaries that are easy to freeze and not look at ways to make our pay approaches more equitable for the whole. I mean, right now in this very moment might not be the sign, but if we just keep on this same track, we're going to get the same results and the same problems.
I would simply state that negotiations are going, and there will be a time where you'll be in front of you and you'll have your ability to cast your vote if you support it or not. And so, at this point, we're going to navigate those pathways to honor those that are working in our district, and I think they work extremely hard, with the understanding that our budget's not where we would like to get everybody to be. On record, this is not about me or my salary. Right? This is about the people that work alongside me. So you won't hear me talk about my salary, but those people that do need it, they're sitting out there.
And I appreciate that, Superintendent Welts, but when we go out and look for a superintendent and we advertise, say $30,000 or $40,000 below the AA expectation, and that's what Helena is known for, there's a bigger overarching, and we can work right now, but I feel like as a board, we have a responsibility to keep our employee groups competitive so that we can continue at all levels of the organization to recruit and retain our employee groups and have them feel compelled and motivated to stay with us because they feel like they're getting paid a fair wage.
And there's where we're at right now, is that
it is.
We're working on that without the funds to do it. So I would like to get us back on track and bring Janelle back up.
Quick question though. So I mean, because we're looking to, this is an action item, right? Like we're going to approve the budgets with the contingencies, like
with the
based on the
assumption.
assumptions, right? Okay. So what happens, for instance, during negotiations, they don't accept what was proposed and there's a higher amount? Like, how do we make adjustments for some of these things that are not the way we predicted?
Well,
And then do we come
I
back
would
and
have
vote
to
on 'em
shift
again?
more costs into the interlocal.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're working on assumptions, and Janelle's been working, we've been working on assumptions for the last couple of weeks, or if not more, because we don't have those settled. As in any year, if something comes up and power bill goes up, or we see a property and liability emergency, we're going to have to shift funds around, and that means something's going to get depleted so we can fill a coffer somewhere else so we can pay our bills. And right now we have a little of that, but it's going to be eaten into as we go through the school year. So we'll have to make adjustments, and that comes to you.
Board Chair.
Trustee